My cheating wife slept with 5 men at once at a convention. I exposed her to her family, and karma sentenced her to an agonizing death. If this story resonates with you, subscribe to the channel and share in the comments which city you're watching from. We'd love to know where our community is growing. I'm 31 years old, and I was married to my 32-year-old wife for 5 years. We were supposed to start trying for kids when I turned 32. We had a whole life planned ahead of us. I was doing everything right as a husband, just like when we were dating. I never took a wrong step. I wanted to be the best father possible, and I worked hard for it. Now it's all gone. She ruined my life, and I don't know how I'll recover. The worst part is that I feel I could have prevented this from happening. I couldn't get time off work to go with her, and she cheated on me there. If I'd been present, it never would have happened. I know that doesn't change the fact that she's the type of woman capable of cheating on me under the right circumstances. I don't know how to explain it, and I know many will be harsh and say I'm weak, but I found out about all this just a day ago. My head is spinning, and I need a place to talk. I don't want to tell my friends about this. It's humiliating. One of the things that brought us together at the beginning was our love for anime. I know that pushes some people away, but we didn't care. Don't judge anime by the weird things that get the most attention. In essence, it isn't that different from Western animation. I'm not the biggest fan. I watch mainstream shows and movies as much as anime. My wife takes it a bit more seriously than I do, but she doesn't reach the level of the most obsessed people I've met. Before getting married, we attended several conventions together. We aren't the type to cosplay, unless it's something simple with normal clothes and maybe an accessory. It was always a lot of fun. When we got married, life got more intense, especially when my career started taking off. Because of that, in the 5 years we've been married, we've probably only been to 2 conventions. It wasn't a priority anymore. However, one was announced in a nearby city, so it wasn't going to be such a headache to attend, and she really wanted us to go. As soon as she told me, I started arranging time off at work for that weekend. I did my best, but in the end it didn't work out. I made sure she knew well in advance. She was disappointed. I tried to find some kind of compromise at my office, but they didn't budge, especially since we were working on a big project at the time. I told her she could go alone. She was really looking forward to it, and I didn't want to be the reason she missed it, considering how much she anticipated it. At first, she didn't want to go without me, but she already had a costume in mind. In the end, she went. I had no problems with her going because I trusted her. I was sad I couldn't join her, but I was glad she was going to have fun. They say hindsight is 20/20ths, and I really wish I'd stopped her from going. I could have said we'd go to the next one or found a way to make it up to her. When she returned from the convention, there was nothing different about her. She acted like always, so I didn't have the slightest suspicion that anything had happened. That makes me wonder how many other times things might have happened behind the scenes without me having a clue, just because she acted normal on the outside. She showed me all the photos she took, the cool cosplays she saw, and she bought me several things too. I would have remained in total ignorance. Maybe I would have preferred it, but I received a message in my Instagram requests. I didn't follow that person and had no idea who he was, but on his profile I could see he'd also attended the convention. He'd posted a photo of himself there. He went dressed as Megumi from JJK. My first guess was that she'd mentioned what my company does and he was interested in doing business with us. They say furries are usually incredibly rich, and maybe that applies to some anime cosplayers. It wasn't a dumb guess because it made more sense for him to try to contact me if she gave him my details. I replied, and he explained that he'd met my wife at the convention and they'd hit it off. He'd looked her up because he liked her and was surprised to see she had a husband. At that moment, I got worried because there wasn't a good reason for him to tell me that. It's the kind of thing you find out and just let go, unless the person lied saying they were single and you want to warn their partner. That's what I assumed. How stupid I was to think it was something so simple. And even it already terrified me. I had no idea how serious everything would get. He let me know that something had happened with her. I already had my suspicions, but it irritated me how slow he was taking the conversation, as if he was afraid to tell me what he knew. I had to speak harshly to him and tell him to just spit it out because my anxiety was through the roof. He confessed he'd slept with her. The convention was at a hotel, and on the last day, one of the most popular attendees organized a small get-together with the people he'd met during the event. The gathering was in this guy's suite. When it ended, a lot of people went to sleep, but some stayed. She was one of them. They'd all been drinking, and while some fell asleep, there were about 2 women and 5 men left, including him, awake and chatting. It could have been the alcohol, or maybe just that they were all bad people, but the conversation turned sexual. The host was the one who insisted the most. He started talking about trains and asked if either of the girls had ever had a threesome. Both said no, and he suggested they try it right there. The other girl wasn't interested. Facing the pressure, she ended up leaving, but for some reason my wife decided to stay. She could have left with the other girl. It would have been easy, but she decided to remain there. I hate her so much for that. Things moved to the bedroom because it seemed she was interested. And yes, at that point everything started. The 5 men took turns with her. She wasn't drunk. She'd been drinking like everyone else. But according to this man, she was still aware of her actions. She still could have said no. Already told me. But after reading everything, my mind was so messed up that I asked if he'd also participated, and he said yes. He said none of them knew she was married. He was probably the only one who suspected it, because he'd been investigating on his own. I told him that was a lie because she always wears her wedding ring, but he swore she wasn't wearing it. I checked the photos she took, and she appeared with the ring in all of them. If this guy is telling the truth, it means she took off her ring to mingle with people and only put it on for photos. If that's true, I don't know the person I've been living with. That level of commitment to deceive me is terrifying. I asked him why I should believe him, and he told me he had no way to convince me. But a minute later, he mentioned I could see a video. One of the men recorded with his phone when it was his turn. They told him to stop, and he did, but no one made sure he deleted the video. He didn't have that guy's username, but he knew his first name and what character he was dressed as, so he said he'd try to find him for me. He hasn't done it yet, but I believe him. It's too twisted a story for someone to make up out of nowhere. I don't know for sure, but there are too many details. What will be the motive? To push me away from her, so he could have her. Maybe, but that's something only a sociopath would try. I don't know what to do. It's all over. I had a happy life, and now everything is ruined. I don't need to see that video to know there's a 98% chance it's true. It's one thing for your wife to cheat on you, but doing it in the worst way possible. Why? I was enough. I've always been enough for her. Was it for the thrill? She misses the wild freedom of her college years. I try to understand it, but nothing makes sense. Frankly, I don't even want to try to figure it out. Maybe I'll do it when I get absolute confirmation, but for now I'm going to avoid the subject and act like I don't have to face it, because life is easier that way. I have too much work to worry about this garbage. Update 1. This is a nightmare. As much as I knew what I wrote before was probably true, a small part of me kept hoping to find a reason to say it was all a lie. It isn't a lie. That guy, who I'll call Arthur, was telling the truth the whole time. He managed to find the Instagram account of the man who'd been recording during the act. At first, the guy claimed to have deleted the video, but Arthur knew he was lying. There was no reason to get rid of it, unless he had a partner and didn't want to get caught. Arthur ended up paying him to send the video. He didn't tell me how much it cost him, but I imagine it was a considerable sum. He warned me before doing it, but I told him to cut the crap and send it to me right away. And so he did. It was exactly as he described, clearly a hotel room. And this guy was behind her. I knew it was her because her shirt was lifted and I could see her back tattoo. It's not something generic, so there was no way she could lie saying it wasn't her. I could hear she was enjoying it. You can also hear the moment they tell the guy to stop recording. She looked back when she heard it, but she didn't stop or complain. Her face was right there. When the guy moved to turn off the recording, the phone captured the rest of the room. Even though you couldn't see faces, there were other men in the room. At least one of them was totally naked. This absolutely confirmed everything I'd been told. The video only lasts 18 seconds, but it's all the proof I need. I thanked Arthur, and that'll be the last time I talk to him. I'm afraid of what I'm going to do. I really am. I have to confront her, and I'll do my best to keep a cool head, but it terrifies me what might come out of me when I do. Everything we built is ruined, and I'm going to make sure she regrets it. I've never been so sure of something. Update 2. I didn't waste time confronting her after my last post. I couldn't keep it to myself anymore, especially seeing how she played me for a fool acting completely normal. I hate the idea that someone can do something so devastating and then come back to smile in your face as if they hadn't stabbed you in the back. I was going crazy. The day after writing that post, I approached her and asked her again about the convention. I wanted to know everything that had happened and if she'd made friends. She told me everything, but of course she omitted the fact that she'd let herself be used by 5 men one after another. When she finished, I asked if she was sure she wasn't omitting anything. She looked at me confused and said nothing was missing. When I asked her a second time, she hesitated. She knew I was pointing out something specific. This time she didn't answer. She asked me what I had in mind. I told her I knew what she'd done and that it disgusted me. She kept playing dumb. I asked her directly if she'd let herself be used by all those men. She denied it instantly. She told me whoever had told me that must be lying. Apparently, it was something she couldn't even imagine doing, and she'd never put herself in that position. I assumed she thought she could argue her way out because there'd be no evidence to prove her lie. She kept insisting I tell her who had told me, but I'm not stupid enough to reveal my source. I got tired of all her nonsense, so I admitted I had a video that proved she was lying to my face. I knew with absolute certainty she'd been involved. She hadn't cheated on me just once, but 5 times in a single night. I yelled every offensive word in existence at her. Never in my life had I been so furious. Remembering how out of control I was, I feel a bit ashamed, but it was justified to feel that rage. No one could tell me otherwise. I didn't wait for her to deny it or lie to me again. I simply played the downloaded video right in her face so she could see it herself. I challenged her to try and deny it was her. I pointed out the tattoo. I pointed out the moment she looked at the camera. She couldn't say anything because I had her cornered. Any lie at that point would make her look like a complete idiot because the evidence was crystal clear. To no one's surprise, that's when the crying started. She began to sob uncontrollably. She didn't even try to say anything or defend herself. It was just tears and snot. I left the room because I was so irritated I felt the urge to hit her. Say whatever you want, but I have the right to be enraged. When I returned, she'd calmed down a bit, but her eyes were red from crying so much. I sat in front of her. I wanted to see if she had anything to say, but she'd look at me and look away over and over again. I'd also calmed down a bit and asked her why she'd done it, because I really wanted to know. I wanted to understand what the reasoning had been when she knew she had a loving husband at home. What made such an act the most attractive thing for a woman her age? She isn't a college student doing stupid things. When she finally spoke, she said she didn't intend it as an excuse and knew how it sounded, but that it had simply been a spur-of-the-moment thing. She was under the influence of alcohol. The opportunity presented itself, and she thought it was exciting. She made the mistake of not stopping to think about the fact that she had a man, and that had been her biggest failure. She said if she'd kept me in mind, she wouldn't have done what she did. I asked her if that was true. I mentioned that she'd taken off her wedding ring after the photo she sent me. She denied it at first, and then I asked if she wanted me to prove it. I was bluffing because I had no proof of that part. But to no one's surprise, the fool took the bait and admitted she'd done it. Her excuse was that it didn't fit with the cosplay. It was such a stupid excuse that I turned around and left. I'd already spoken with a lawyer, though the papers weren't ready yet. When I returned home, I acted like she was invisible, and she eventually took the hint and stopped trying to talk to me. 2 days later, she received the divorce notification. When I got back from work, I saw her crying. She was smart enough not to say anything to me about it. So for now, all that's left is to finish the process. We tried to negotiate a division of assets, but she won't accept what I'm proposing, so we'll have to go to trial. I'll see her there. Update 3. This will be the last update, since I want to leave this whole saga behind. Honestly, I'm tired of all the stress she brought into my life. Now that I'm done with her, I want to leave her in the past, which is where she belongs. The divorce didn't favor me, which I hate. She was clearly unfaithful, but she was still awarded the house and alimony. How does that make sense? It practically rewards women for being unfaithful and breaking their marriages. It's stupid. That's what infuriated me. So I sent the screenshots of my chats with Arthur to her family members. I sent them a censored version of the video, but where they could clearly see the tattoo in her face. They took her side, although they found it hard to argue in her favor. The fool tried to defend herself anyway. I wasn't satisfied with that, so my next stop was her coworkers. I found several of them and sent them the same thing. I told them it was so they'd know what kind of person they share their workplace with. Most didn't reply. A few did and were horrified. Someone tipped her off because she showed up at my office and made a scene. It was funny because the only thing she could say was that I had no right to do what I did. Since she couldn't mention what she herself had done, I did it for her. It didn't take her long to turn around and leave in shame. You can't cheat on me like that and ever expect to have the moral high ground. I found out from one of her coworkers who seemed to be looking for more details that by that time the whole workplace knew. It was the kind of gossip they'd never been lucky enough to get. I'm glad I made her life uncomfortable there, and I'm sure she won't last long at that job. I gave that coworker what she was looking for. The more they knew, the better for me, because nothing would make her look good at that point. I wish I could have hurt her even more to the point she wanted to leave the country. That's out of my reach, so I did my best. Even if her family publicly supported her, they now know what kind of person she is. It only takes one awful Thanksgiving dinner for someone to throw that at her as an insult. My work here is done. It's time to move on. 5 years of life, trust, and plans for the future erased in a single chaotic weekend. And she still had the nerve to act like nothing happened. Update. It's been 8 years since I signed the divorce papers and erased her trace from my life. I moved to another city, moved up in my career, and finally found the peace she tried to take from me. However, fate has a very particular way of closing cycles, and I found out about her end in the most brutal way possible. I received a call from one of her brothers. I hadn't spoken to anyone in her family for years, but his voice sounded broken. He told me she was admitted to a hospital, terminally ill, and plunged into unbearable agony. She'd contracted HIV, and because her lifestyle after the divorce was erratic and careless. By the time it was detected, it was too late. The virus had devastated her immune system. But that wasn't all. The family, in an attempt to find explanations for her misfortune, ended up discovering the truth behind that weekend at the convention. She hadn't only slept with those 5 men that night. She'd kept in touch with them for months, leading a double life that neither I nor her family suspected back then. The most shocking part came later. Through health investigations and contact tracing, it was learned that some of the 5 men involved in that video had also died, and others were in the final stages of the disease. It was a chain of irresponsibility and betrayal that ended up consuming them all. She died just 2 days after that call, alone in a hospital bed, with her body withered and her mind lost. When I hung up the phone, I didn't feel sadness or remorse or the urge to cry. What I felt was an icy, absolute satisfaction. Many will say it's cruel to rejoice in someone's death, but for me this was poetic justice at its finest. She sought the thrill, the chaos, and the betrayal at the expense of my health and my future, regardless of the consequences. In the end, the train she decided to board took her exactly to the destination she carved out with her own actions. The chapter closed forever, and I can finally smile knowing that karma didn't leave any outstanding debt. What do you think of this outcome? Do you think justice was delayed but arrived? Or do you think the protagonist took his revenge too far by exposing her before the end? Leave us your comment below. We want to know if you'd have acted the same way facing a betrayal of such magnitude.